And we are live. Welcome to the NBA Strategy Show. It is Friday, January 17th. I am Josh Engleman, here to break down, depending on the size of the slate that you're looking at, depending on the site you're playing at, a 7-game slate on DraftKings and a 9-game slate on FanDuel. Had to make sure we were live there for a second. Hit that like button if you're here. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. And follow me on Twitter at Josh Engleman. Man, I thought I had one yesterday. I did. Ended up finishing 18th. Now, the reason this is frustrating is not the performance from Jalen Williams. It's from my boy, Domantas Sabonis. Domantas Sabonis had, I want to make sure that I get this right here. I want to miss it. Domantas Sabonis had 46 fantasy points with 7 minutes left to go in the third quarter. He finished with 50.5. So 4.5 fantasy points from that point forward, including playing an entire rotation in the fourth quarter. This guy cost me a decent chunk of change by not just simply being normal in the fourth. It would not have taken 9 fantasy points, I think would have gotten me to third. Stings, man. So ended up finishing 18th last night in the main. This was the only one that broke free. I had a lot of that Portland-Sacramento game. That worked out well for the DeRozan piece. It worked out quite well for the Keegan Murray piece. And then Sabonis just fouled like 4 dudes in the fourth quarter, missed a bunch of shots, barely participated, finished with 50.5. Stings, man. It stings. Like, I didn't need much. He didn't even have to play well, but he scored 4.5 fantasy points from that point forward. Only one guy had Sabonis ahead of me, so that would have been a slight blocker, but I deserve it for the amount of shit I talk about Sabonis, that's for sure. We did not get the full Jalen Williams experience we wanted yesterday. It was a little bit muted, thanks to the Oklahoma City Thunder beating the living poop out of the Cleveland Cavaliers. Just steamrolled them from start to finish. And they were never in it. It was never close. Just destroyed. OKC's legit, man. And if and when they pick up something at the deadline, God, they're going to be scary. Big day out of Siakam. Solid day out of Malik Monk. Miles Turner with a big one. Amin Thompson continues to just play 40 minutes a night. Didn't go well for Houston, that's for sure. Starters were pretty solid negatives with no Fred VanVleet. What else? Keyshawn George had a 37.5 fantasy point day, which is nuts. Ryan Dunn had a really good day as a value option. Whew. You know who didn't have a good day that I had quite a bit of? Anthony Simons. I don't think he's taking well to playing alongside Scoot Henderson. Anthony Simons, 0 points in 29 minutes and 52 seconds. 0. He's a guy that scores. 0 for 9 from the field, 0 for 5 from 3, didn't take a free throw, minus 31 for the game, 0 points, 1 rebound, 5 assists, and a steal. Woof. Woof. Woof, woof, woof. That's just really, really unappealing. And I had way too much of Anthony Simons yesterday. So obviously that one didn't help me in any way. That was incredibly not helpful. Simons, 26 million left this year, 27.5 next year. NBA fan, I don't think Simons would be an OKC target. Let's see. Do I need to set my filters from pre-lock into late swap to get the lineups I wanted for ownership, salary, etc.? Yes. Yeah, whatever you run before lock doesn't exist in late swap. Yeah. I'm ready to break this bad boy down, though. It was a fun slate yesterday. This one's kind of gnarly. Magic are 12-point dogs. Raptors are 12-point dogs. Jazz are 12-point dogs. I mean, OKC is a pretty big favorite in Dallas. If you're playing on the FanDuel side, Brooklyn's 12-point dogs. Minnesota Knicks was shaping up to be a really awesome game until Dante DiVincenzo decided to get hurt and miss his first game of the year in the one spot I would have imagined he wanted to play the most. I mean, if you ever want to know how bad the Jazz are, and they're obviously missing a ton of dudes, they're 11-point dogs to the Pels. Let's get into it. Break down some basketball, shall we? Let me delete my lineups from yesterday. Got it. Alrighty. So, here we go. Oh, wrong screen. So, here we go. Try this again. All right. Orlando Magic are 12.5-point underdogs in Boston. 210 total. This is the lowest total on the slate, for DraftKings at least, by 10 points. And I have it as the lowest pace game on the slate, 93.1. That is one full possession behind the next slowest game, and 6.5 possessions slower than Charlotte and Chicago. If we include Memphis and San Antonio, Orlando and Boston is 10 full possessions slower than that game. Now, for Orlando, no Goga once again. Still no Gary Harris, no Jet Howard, no Suggs, no Franz. So we're getting a little bit of ownership here into Orlando. 22%, in fact, to Wendell Carter Jr., which it's making me feel right from 2 days ago. He's 4,300. It's the same role. This is not all that different. Daniel Gafford is still on this slate. Clearly a different matchup. Wendell Carter Jr. was projected for like 3% ownership 2 days ago in the exact same situation. This game is worse than that. And now he's getting 20% ownership? I was right 2 days ago. I was absolutely right in wanting to get to more Wendell Carter Jr. But obviously Gafford smashes as chalk, and none of it ever matters. I agree with the ownership coming in for Wendell Carter Jr. at this moment. He's 4,300. I had him 16% optimal, 40% boom, 22% ownership. Yeah, that looks great. They used Jonathan Isaac as the true backup to Wendell Carter Jr. in that last game. So they didn't overlap at all. They split their minutes. I'm going to assume they're doing something similar again today. But Wendell Carter Jr. is the best option you can get to from Orlando. And I have absolutely no issue getting to around 20% of him again. The only other guy that's getting any love here is Cole Anthony, 6,300. Point guard, shooting guard eligible. Now he's 24% owned. He's actually, to me, a little bit over-owned. The minutes are weird now. Like, they're still giving Trevelyan Queen big minutes. Anthony Black has the ability to pick up big minutes. So I only went to 30 for Cole Anthony. I see him as a little over-owned in this spot. I'm okay with it. But maybe a tad higher than I would want, especially for game one and slow and defensive. Sam Lewis. I think they're playing Banchero and Isaac together Well, yeah. I mean, Paolo Banchero is playing 28 minutes a night. Well, actually, I mean, 27 minutes a night, I guess. But yeah, they're going to play alongside of each other. Jason Gordon. Yeah, I don't know. I think they're ramping Paolo up. I'm a little nervous about his minutes. I'm probably under projecting him right now, if I'm being honest, based on that last game. Because he still only played 27 minutes a night, and they got the shit kicked out of them by Milwaukee. But he did play a rotation in the fourth quarter to get to 26 minutes. So I don't want to jump up on him yet. I don't know if he's stretched out the way that we're thinking it, though. Only other guy getting any love is John Isaac at 10% ownership. If he's going to be the straight backup to Wendell Carter Jr. and be 4K, I think we're going to end up finding better value options today. There's not a lot to like from Orlando, but that's not surprising. Boston's defense is good no matter what sort of lull they're in right now. This is a massive pace down spot for the Magic. They lose 3 possessions below their average. That's not all that appealing. So I don't really want KCP or any of these other guys. I don't really see the path to Banchero, although 8,700 is at the very least interesting. The price is slowly coming down. His points prop today is 24.5 juiced to the under. I got it at 21. So the implication here is that he's going to be playing more than 28 minutes. I'm a little nervous to see that happen. That feels lofty. I wouldn't be surprised if that comes down a little bit here. I also wouldn't be surprised if I bump him up to 30 minutes, but I'm not expecting him to look like a priority in this spot. I want Wendell Carter Jr. I want some of Cole Anthony, and I probably don't want anything else here for the Magic. It's just a really bad spot. It's the only 7 o'clock start. We've got a 7:30 start for Minnesota and the Knicks. We have 4 games at 8, and then we have OKC and Dallas at 8:30. That concludes the DraftKings slate. Memphis San Antonio is at 9:30. Brooklyn and the Lakers is at 10:30. So, I don't mind locking stuff in this first game since it's a pretty narrow window, but I don't know if I want to get guys locked in. It'll mostly be Wendell Carter Jr. here for me. Now, on the Boston end of it, full strength again, which means not playing Boston all that much. Negative 3.7 possessions below their average here for Boston. I mean, Orlando's still a good defense. So, not a great total, not a great pace, tough defensive matchup. Highest owned guy for Boston, 5% to Kristaps Porzingis. You want to tell me these guys are a hair under-owned? You want to get a little bit of Tatum, Brown, White, Holiday, Porzingis? Sure. I would never not roster one of those main guys. There's no chance I have a lot of any of them. I just don't see it. There are so many better spots to attack today. I actually have Boston with the 3rd lowest optimal of any team on the slate and the 3rd lowest boom score. I only have 3 teams today with a boom below 100. Boston, Miami, and Dallas. Boston's just not the team. This game is just not it. Obviously, Orlando looks a little bit better because of Wendell Carter Jr. and Cole Anthony, but this is the 2nd lowest owned game on the slate behind Denver and Miami. There's just better places to target. Now, I know that every time I say something like this, we get, overtime. These guys play 40 minutes. It ends up looking dumb. But I don't think today is that day. I really don't. I think we stay mostly at arm's length from Boston and Orlando. Minnesota Timberwolves. 4-point dogs in New York, 219.5 total. This is the 2nd slowest game. This is the 2nd lowest total on the DraftKings slate. But we've got something to worry about today. Dante DiVincenzo is out. Sprained toe. Not going to be able to be here for his return to New York. Knicks side, we're still waiting on a Q tag for Towns, who missed last game. So we're going to create some value here for Minnesota. We know that Minnesota runs like an 8.25 man rotation. And now we're removing their starting point guard that's been playing 30 minutes a night. And that is creating 35% ownership to Mike Conley, who I believe is the best play on today's slate. Point guard eligible, 3,500. And I would imagine just stepping back into that starter role and picking up a couple extra minutes from where he was. I gave him 28 minutes. We'll need to see stuff in the betting market for sure. But Mike Conley is one of the best plays of the day today. I assume he's starting at least. I guess if we get news that he's not, we can change that up, but I'd be shocked if he's not. I don't know how we avoid Mike Conley today with no Dante DiVincenzo. Mike Conley is not set up to be 3,500 if he's starting. So it's a target score thing more than anything. His target score at 3,500 is 26 fantasy points. I don't know how we dodge that. So he clearly looked the best for me. 22% optimal, a 42% chance of scoring 26 fantasy points. He deserves every bit of that ownership. So does Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Shooting guard, small forward eligible, 3,300. So better positionality for Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Better price than Mike Conley. But he's like a tenth of a fantasy point worse. But that flexibility is also creating north of 35% ownership. And I agree with that too. 20% optimal, 31% boom at 25 fantasy points. These two guys are going to be two of the top 10 plays all day. All day. Grizzly. Have a feeling Cat will force his way to play. Cat, always looking to stick it to people and show them what's what. Classic Cat. If he had that sort of attitude, maybe he wouldn't have let Jimmy Butler punk him in his own gym. Jaden McDaniels is 10% owned. Julius Randle is 10% owned. Ant is just shy of 10% owned. He strikes me as the type of guy that gets up for an MSG game. And then Rudy Gobert, 2% owned. I got him 12% optimal, 29% boom. I said this last time out, and I'm going to say it again today. That's too low for him. No matter how bad he's playing this year, 2% to Rudy Gobert on a 7-game slate as the straight-up starting center that plays, it's just not enough. So I find Rudy Gobert to be under-owned. I'm guessing he's probably one of my bigger leverage plays today. Yeah, he's second. Right now, Rudy Gobert is my number 2 leverage play on the day. So just play him, man. Just play a little Rudy Gobert in large field GPPs. I don't have a ton of interest in Naz Reid, but he's definitely under-owned at 4%. 4,900 power forward center. Looks good. I think Naz Reid looks a lot like Randle and McDaniels. Actually, that's a perfect comp. Jaden McDaniels and Naz Reid look about equal today in terms of success rate and what you need out of them. But McDaniels is getting a little bit more love because he's small forward eligible. If I'm ranking Minnesota, it's Conley, it's Nickeil Alexander-Walker, it's Gobert, Reid, McDaniels, Randle, Ant. I assume Rob Dillingham gets out there for a little bit today. Don't really see the path to getting to him. I assume Josh Minot plays a bit today. I don't really see the path to getting to him. I think we're focused most on Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Conley. Now, we need the starting lineup, but it would really shock me if Conley didn't just pick up the start here. They don't... It's sort of like the way the Knicks operate when somebody's out. I'm just expecting them to consolidate around, like, all of the dudes they already use. Ooh, speaking of, we haven't talked about it in a little bit. The starting five for the Knicks, Brunson, Hart, Bridges, Anunoby, Towns, plus 4.7 points per 100 possessions. Not very good, no matter how much people want to talk about it. Conley, Edwards, McDaniels, Randall, Gobert, plus 1.7. So yes, Knicks, slightly better for sure, as they have been, but this Knicks team is so wildly overrated, it's crazy to me. It really is. Here's a really wild one. Tyrese Halliburton, Andrew Nembhard, Benedict Mathurin, Pascal Siakam, Miles Turner. There's no chance in my mind that anybody thinks the Indy starting five is better than the Knicks starting five. If I put that out as a poll, I think it'd be like 90-10 to the Knicks. The starting five for the Pacers, Halliburton, Nembhard, Mathurin, Siakam, Turner, plus 19.7 points per 100 possessions so far this season. It's the fourth most used lineup of any lineup in the league this year. The Pacers starters are beating the shit out of people. I had no idea. They have a better plus minus. They have a better net rating right now than the Thunder do with Hartenstein in at the 5. 19.7 to the Pacers, 16.9 to OKC. Man, the Pacers need a bench, man. Wow, that is really surprising to me. Anyway, not important for right now. Let's talk about those Knicks. So the Knicks, we know what we're doing here. 1, we need the status of Karl Anthony Towns. We obviously just saw what happens if Towns isn't in. We're going to be getting to some Precious Achiuwa. They'll probably start Jericho Sims. We won't really pay attention to that. But there's no ownership coming into the Knicks. 7% to Towns, 6% to Brunson. Everybody's lower than that. I feel like this happens every morning. And then by the afternoon, all the Knicks starters end up like 5% more owned. Brandon D, they absolutely did. So I expect the Knicks to be getting a little bit more ownership later. They're massively underowned right now if these numbers are real. I have Bridges as my number one value, or my number one leverage option. I have OG Anunoby as my number 3 leverage option. These guys just aren't pulling enough ownership here. They just aren't. Hard hat lunch pail. No Towns. I'm plugging in Hart. Nice. Maybe you'll get 49 minutes again, so he looks really good. These guys are underowned. Bridges is underowned. The 2% is nuts. He should be 10. Josh Hart should be 10. Anunoby should be 10. Brunson should be 10. Towns should be 10. This whole team is massively underowned. Tough spot, but they're at home. As I see it, I want the Knicks starters as leverage options. And I assume they won't look like leverage options by the time we get to lock. My guess is Bridges ends up like 7 or 8%. Hart ends up like 7%. Anunoby ends up like 7 or 8%. And all of this leverage just sort of kind of goes away. That's my guess. That's my guess. Oh. Pistons been on a heater since December. I don't know about a heater, but they're better. That I'll agree with. That I will definitely agree with. But, you know, they're still average at best. Okay. Let's talk about game number 3. Denver Nuggets. 1.5 point dogs in Miami. 226 total. Obviously, we know what we do with Denver here. But we need the status of one major Denver player, and that guy is Nikola Jokic. Although we also need the status on Aaron Gordon. Both Jokic and Gordon are questionable today. Jamal Murray currently listed as probable. 15% ownership to Jokic, 10 to Murray. basically nothing else to the rest of Denver. Steven, did Keith cause any chaos roaming free yesterday morning? Yeah, he pooped right at the base of the steps when I walked down. He let me know, like, hey, I got out. Don't ever put me in there again. It's funny. Funny. Yeah, he got me, man. He got me. What a jerk, you know? What an absolute jerk. Hold on. Pistons are a top 10 offense? That's not true. Nikki, that's not true. They're 18th. Unless you mean since December, but they're 18th. Steven, you say that it's easier than a child, but it depends how old the child is. If I have a 6-month-old, it doesn't climb out of the cage and shit on the floor. It just stays in one place. But I don't know. I've never had a kid. I don't know how kids work. I've never changed a diaper in my life, and I don't plan on starting now. You want to tell me like a 2.5-year-old? Then yeah. Okay, gotcha. Gotcha, Nikki. I was gonna say, like, I don't think that's a true statement in any way. Oh. Let's see, what is it really though? Cleaning the glass has them 13th. So they're in the ballpark. I mean, even since December, negative 0.7 net rating. That's good for Detroit, but, you know. Anyway, let's get back to Denver. 11-9 for Jokic. I fully anticipate us having enough value to... Jeremy Savage, you have 3 dogs and 4 kids. How the hell are you always in chat? Do you just put them in a 3x3 cage like I do and you just go about your business? That seems so rough, man. That seems so rough. Look, play Jokic, but we have Giannis as a pay up today. We don't have Wemby on the DraftKings side. So our 2 main pay ups, we do have Shea though, most likely on the DraftKings side. So we do have some pay ups, but if you can get to Jokic, get to Jokic. 38% opportunity to score 67 fantasy points. That will be our goal today. Einsteinium, maybe. I'll ask Greg. We'll see. We'll at least stick around long enough to get it. Like, unless we're waiting on news for OKC in Dallas, I doubt we do it, but we'll see. Jeremy Savage on his Antonio Cromartie path. Murray looks okay, probably a hair over-owned, but 7K is a decent price tag. You know, you can get 5% of Westbrook. You can get 5% of Christian Brown if you want. Now, if Aaron Gordon doesn't play, we'll probably pay pretty close attention to Peyton Watson. But I think the main focus for Denver is kind of just Jokic and nothing else. And I can handle that. Anytime I could roster Nikola Jokic, I would like to roster Nikola Jokic. That's all. Now for Miami, this can go one of 2 ways. So Bam Adebayo is available. So is Khalil Ware. Jimmy Butler is back. Jeremy Savage, that's not what that surgery is, man. They don't remove the tubes. She had her tubes removed. That's a funny way to describe that. That's legit funny. Do I think yeah, Jimmy Butler is playing today, Nikki. He's back, suspension over. No ownership coming into the Heat. 3% to Tyler Hero is the most of anything here. I will not be rostering anything from Miami, I would imagine. but it does kind of feel like one of those spots where Jimmy Butler either goes out there and like only shoots with his left hand or drops like 50 real points. There's no in between here for Butler. If Butler has a like 17 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists game, that would shock me. He's either going to go out there and be a jerk off or he's going to rub somebody's face in it. I don't think there's a middle ground. So, as I see this one, we're playing absolutely nothing from Miami. They are 8% owned in the aggregate. That is half as owned of Boston, who's second. They're the lowest owned team. They're the lowest owned or the lowest optimal. I got them second in boom, but they're basically tied with Dallas. There's nothing here for Miami. Nothing. I don't know who you would prioritize. The only reason we want to watch any part of Denver and Miami tonight is to see if Jimmy Butler causes any problems. But Miami looks terrible. Now we're going to start getting in, well, maybe not now, but in another game, we're going to start getting into all of the main event stuff. Ooh, not this one. Toronto. Actually, let's hit the schedule first. That would be better. So, schedule for the rest of the day. We have NFL strategy coming up next at 10 a.m. Laffy and Greg breaking down the games for this weekend. And you guys know I'm not much of an NFL guy. I love our content and I love our tools for the NFL, but I'm just not a big NFL guy. But I do, in my heart, still support my Washington Redskins. I do. Now, they are obviously likely to get destroyed by the Detroit Lions. I almost said Pistons. That's how little I care about football. But I would like to see them pick up the win. And the reason I want to see them pick up the win is because of the bet between Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. So that is what I want. That is what I want. So go Skins. Go Skins. Anyway, back to the schedule. Watch the NFL show at 10 o'clock. Sorry, had to talk about it. Deeper Dive, 5 p.m. Myself and DK. We're going to break this one down again later today. Greg and Eric will be back for Live Before Lock at 6. Greg and I will be back for Playback at 7. That will be playback.tv/Stokastic. Head to Playback. Watch the games along with us. If you have League Pass, you just link your account. By the way, this costs nothing. Whether you have League Pass or you don't, you can just come to Playback. It's like watching a YouTube stream. If you don't have League Pass, we have 20 VIP passes we can hand out so you can watch games with us. But even if you can't see the game, it's just like our standard YouTube shows. You'll see Greg and I. You'll see us talking about it. We just happen to be also watching the game. We're going to talk about late swaps, ownership, bets. We'll probably talk a little UFC tonight since it's Friday. So if you guys want to come hang out, Playback's the best. Oh no, Prince, you're a Washington fan? I'm cheering for the Lions now. I might go put my Barry Sanders shirt on just to make myself feel better. Alrighty. Let's get to this Raptors-Bucks game. Raptors 11.5 point dogs in Milwaukee. 230 total. Unsurprisingly, the Raptors will be without Emmanuel Quickley today. Jacoby Walter still with the G League team. Ochai Agbaji is questionable with a right hand laceration. So we're not getting much ownership for Toronto, and I don't really think that they should be getting a ton. The guys that are getting it are the guys that should be around 10% owned, and they are. It's just shy of 10% for Scotty Barnes, right at 10% for Barrett, right at 10 for Jake Puddle, right at 10 for Grady Dick. That's where I have it. 13% optimal on Barnes, 9 for Barrett, 8 for Pirtle, 9 for Dick. Any one of those four guys seem pretty reasonable to me. I doubt that I would want to have much of anything here. I do think Scotty Barnes is under-owned. He is my 10th ranked leverage play for right now. So I do think he should be a little bit higher than 7% owned, but we're talking about these four guys being in the 10 range and nothing else. I don't want Davion Mitchell. If Ochai Agbaji is out, maybe you could roll the dice a little bit on Boucher. But I don't, why? What's the point? Pace down spot for Toronto. Double-digit underdogs. What's the point? I'm going to pay attention to the starters, and in particular, Scotty Barnes. Because the position for Barnes is really helpful. Point guard, small forward. That's really good flexibility. Only 8,700 at this point. That's not too crazy of a price tag for him. So Barnes would be my top dude here for Toronto. Then Barrett, Pirtle, and Dick, you can kind of just choose randomly there. They all look basically the same. But give me some Scotty Barnes. What I really want you guys to give me, though, is Giannis Antetokounmpo, who to me is likely the best pay-up option today. He's 11,400. He's power forward center, which is so massive when you start comparing him to Nikola Jokic. Getting that power forward eligibility changes everything, and you're seeing it in the ownership. 30% ownership coming into Giannis. I have him 26% optimal, a 44% boom rating. You're looking for 65 fantasy points. All of that seems very obtainable. So if you're paying up today, I don't think there's an easier way to do it than Giannis. Position works, price works, matchup works. All of it works. He's easier to get to than Nikola Jokic. This one's simple to me. He's the preferred payout. Now we're seeing about 10% ownership coming into Bobby Portis and Dame, and then about 15 to Middleton. I don't really agree with any of this other than Dame. Dame's 8,400, 11% owned. I actually have him 14% optimal. Target score of 50. I would be happy to be in that 15% ownership range for Dame. But I have no idea why Chris Middleton is getting 15% ownership. I think that'll go away. I don't think he looks very good. He's playing like 23 minutes a night. And Bobby Portis' minutes have been down quite a bit. So, should he be like 5 to 10% owned? Yeah. Am I interested in him all that much? No, not really. This is Giannis and Dame for me. This is Giannis and Dame for me. 11, so what's Jokic? Jokic is like what? Almost $1,000 more expensive? Jokic is 11.9, Giannis 500. Jokic is 11.9, Giannis is 11.4, LaMelo at 10.4, and then Shea at 10.2. It's Giannis by a mile for all of those guys. By a mile. Love the Greek Freak. All right, now we're getting into the real ownership spots. The Utah Jazz. Ugh. I don't want to do this, but we're doing it today. No Clarkson, no Collins, no Juzang, no Walker Kessler, no Lauri Markkanen, no Micah Potter. Colin Sexton is available. So, assuming we get Drew Eubanks as the starting center for the Jazz, I gave him 27 minutes. He's 4,100, and he's currently projected for 30% ownership. I will be playing quite a bit of Drew Eubanks. 40% chance of scoring 29 fantasy points. That is the mark that we're looking for here. Jazz, by the way, 11-point dogs in New Orleans, 230 total. But assuming Eubanks is the starter, and I don't really see the path to him not being that, he's a fantasy point per minute guy. We're going to get quite a bit of Eubanks. We also have 20% ownership coming into Keontae George, who had a massive game in his return. He's 6K. He doesn't have most of the other talented dudes around him. Deserves that ownership. Bryce Sensabaugh is 20% owned. He's small forward, power forward eligible, 4,800. Only needs 32 fantasy points at that price tag. He looks like he should be 20% owned. Kyle Filipowski, though, that one we need to have a conversation about. He's 4,200. He's power forward center eligible. I gave him 22 minutes, and so did Stokastic. You could say that I'm a little low on projection. I do not think that Kyle Filipowski should be 20% owned, and I don't think that Kyle Filipowski will be 20% owned by the time we get to lock. Is he an okay value? Sure. I don't love the idea of getting him, though. Like, he seems to only play like 21 or 22 minutes a night. He rarely gets that bump up. I'd actually be more interested. I would ignore Filipowski given that ownership. And I would look at Oscar Tshiebwe. Because I think Tshiebwe is going to play a decent chunk of the backup 5 minutes. He is available. I went 19 minutes. It's certainly not like a fun name to click on. No one's clamoring for him. He's not projected for any ownership. He played 18 minutes 2 days ago, or 2 games ago, rather, when a bunch of these guys were out. They only have 11 guys today, so I kind of assume that he's going to be getting enough run. He's the flat 3K. That's just more interesting to me than a 19% owned Kyle Filipowski. Now, let me be clear here. I don't really want to play either one of those two guys. I'm just kind of pointing out that Tshiebwe is maybe a little underrepresented because it's not going to take much for him to have to fall into a couple extra minutes. And they just don't have a lot of like dudes like that. And there's a ton of minutes to go around. These guys are drowning in point guards and shooting guards. They're not exactly drowning in bigs. So a little sneaky in the large field GPPs. Don't prioritize them. For Utah, prioritize Keontae George, Drew Eubanks, and Bryce Sensabaugh. Now, I would argue 3% owned Colin Sexton at 7,500 is under-owned a hair, but you're kind of paying up to be a little contrarian for him. But, I mean, Utah's just missing everybody. Everybody. Now, the Pels. No Brandon Ingram. No Herb Jones. DeJounte Murray probable. So most of the team is in today. We're getting 20% ownership to DeJounte Murray and like 5 to 10 on Murphy, McCollum, and Zion. I actually don't think these Pelicans guys look all that good. I would argue DeJounte Murray is a bit over-owned at 20%. I don't think he looks any different than Trey Murphy. I don't really think that DeJounte Murray looks any different than CJ. I don't have a ton of interest in Zion. And I say ton because it's Zion. 8,600 power forward center for Williamson here today. I mean, should he have very little issue with the Utah Jazz defense? Yeah, of course. But I don't see these guys as guys you go to a lot. I think they're just like functional options. 10%ers. I would take, if I could take 10% off of Murray and give like 3% each to Murphy, McCollum, and Williamson, that would make the most sense to me. But I don't want much here. They're just really not a good team. Either one of them, honestly. But if you're getting to a side of this game, it's very clearly the Utah side. Clearly. But if DeJounte Murray's going to start making shots, maybe he's going to end up being a little bit better. He hasn't been making shots for essentially the entire year. But the true shooting has begun to ramp up. So maybe, just maybe, DeJounte Murray can be real. Game number 6. Charlotte Hornets. 4-point dogs in Chicago. 235 total. For the Hornets. I gotta find him here. Moussa Diabate is questionable. We'll keep an eye on that because he would likely be the backup center to Mark Williams. Brandon Miller is questionable. Mark Williams is probable. So we're getting 25% ownership to LaMelo Ball. I think he deserves it. I got him 18% optimal, 35% boom. You're looking for 60 out of him. This is a great matchup. This is the fastest paced game on the DraftKings slate, highest total on the DraftKings slate. So get yourself a bunch of LaMelo. Happy to get there. Not really that tough of a price tag. We're also getting 25% ownership to Miles Bridges. He's 7,300, power forward only. He's been playing like 33, 34 minutes a night now. You're looking for 45 out of him at that salary. I got him to 16% optimal, 30% boom. I think Ball and Bridges both deserve a pretty sizable chunk of ownership today. And then we get to Mark Williams. 6,800, center only, currently projected for 25% ownership. Now, we just watched him go ham. I'm a little light on the projection. I'm definitely a little scared. I think 25% ownership is a little too high right now. You want to tell me that's 15 to 20? That makes sense. There's a never-ending supply of centers here, guys. And that just feels a little too high. Now, he's really good. 1.2 fantasy points per minute. I got a 25% chance of scoring 42 fantasy points. The minutes are certainly there. They want to give him everything that he can get. This feels like a step too far for 25% ownership. But he looks really good. I'm not saying I don't want to have him. I just think he's a hair over-owned. Brandon Miller, not all that interesting. If he ends up out, maybe we create a little bit of value here. But I think the only focus you have for Charlotte is Ball, Bridges, and Mark Williams. Points prop on Mark Williams right now is 16.5. I have it at 14.5. So I am a little light, but I think 15 to 20% makes a little bit more sense. It's a hair over-owned. But those three guys are all 25%, man. They're three of the most owned guys on the day. If I look at that quickly. Let's see. Bridges, Ball, Williams. All right. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. LaMelo Ball, Miles Bridges, and Mark Williams are 3 of the top 10 owned plays to start the day. I will definitely like Mark Williams a bit more if Diabate is out. Because then it's just Taj behind him. If Diabate is there, then they have another, functional big. So we will want to pay attention. But get Ball and Bridges, man. Looking damn good. Chicago Bulls, unowned. Q-tag on Josh Giddey for right now, which could affect some things. Ayo Dosunmu is probable. 8% ownership to Kobe White is the most of anybody on the Bulls. Levine a hair underowned. Giddey a hair underowned. The most you're really looking for here for anybody out of Chicago is 10%. It's a pretty big pace down spot for Chicago. They lose 2.2 possessions below their average. But I really don't want much here. I think Levine and Giddey are the two best options. I don't see any of them as priorities, just as ownership pivots. Dustin, I think you're overreacting to this one a little bit. They sent away a 27-year-old 18-minute-a-game backup. Mark Williams was always their starter, always their future. I don't think Mark Williams cared at all that Nick Richards was on the team. Somebody's going to be the backup center all the time. If they trade Nick Richards away, it's not like they don't have another center. Somebody else just steps right into that role, sight unseen. So, I get where you're coming from there, but it's Mark Williams has no need to prove anything to Charlotte. He's already their dude. Nick Richards wasn't slowing Mark Williams' progression down. Jeremy says, don't like both balls. No, I'm more of a Lance Armstrong guy. One ball. Final game of the DraftKings slate. Oklahoma City Thunder on the back-to-back, 7-point favorites in Dallas, 223 total. I do not know if we're going to have Alex Caruso today. Clearly, we don't have Hartenstein. Clearly, we don't have Chet. Clearly, we don't have AJ Mitchell. Chat's been talking a lot about Shea's wrist. We'll see when the injury report comes out. But what we will see is us playing a boatload of OKC. 25% ownership to Shea. 25% ownership to Jalen. 30 to Dort. 10 to Wallace. 20 to Jalen Williams with a Y. We're going to be doing this one again. 10% to Isaiah Joe. You could argue Aaron Wiggins deserves a little bit more ownership. Kenrich Williams is getting 10. From specifics, Shea looks the best. Interesting comp to LaMelo today. I have no problems getting to Jalen Williams. I have no problems getting to Cason Wallace, to Dort, to Joe, to Jalen with a Y, to Kenrich. I'm just going to have an absolute ton of OKC again. Late night spot, so this keeps me free for late swaps if I need them. We do need their injury report, so we got to figure that one out. But yeah, I'm going right back to $3,800 Jalen Williams. Not like yesterday. He's not going to be a 70% owned dude. But he is still a really good value play today, and I assume he's starting again at center. But we need to pay attention, because if these guys end up with another guy out, we're going to have even more value here to OKC. But I don't know how you dodge these dudes. They are currently the most owned team on DraftKings. So buckle up, guys, because we're going to have a lot of Oklahoma City. But to me, the best plays are Shea, Wallace, Dort, and then Jalen Williams without the Y. But we need that injury report, because this could look different. For Dallas, we're going to be getting Kyrie Irving back, probably. He is questionable right now. I got him in. I am not playing him at 9,300. The only guy getting love here, Daniel Gafford, 5,500, 28% owned. Interesting to see Daniel Gafford's ownership be right there with Wendell Carter Jr. It's almost like I nailed that one 2 days early, but didn't get rewarded for it. Gafford is very clearly the best option here for Dallas with no Derek Lively in. I went 27 minutes. He projects well. You could tell me he's a hair over-owned, but I thought that last time and he rubbed my face in it. So, yeah, give me Gafford and give me nothing else. I mean, I have 6% optimal to Najee Marshall and PJ Washington. And these guys are running into an OKC team that is really unfun to play. So, if Kyrie ends up out, maybe we create some value in that Grimes, Dinwiddie, Jaden Hardy group. But I don't expect to have much of Dallas at all outside of Daniel Gafford. And I don't really think you guys should either. Slim says, I'm taking shots on Brandon Carlson tonight. Well, don't do that, because now you're just wasting a lineup. There's no reason whatsoever to play shares of Brandon Carlson today. Do not do that. Do not do that. All right, final two games. I'm going to move pretty quick here. These are FanDuel only. Memphis Grizzlies, 2-point favorites in San Antonio, 239 total. Highest total of the day, highest pace of the day. Not all that much ownership on FanDuel, though. 20% to Desmond Bane at 7,300. I think he largely deserves that. Ja is questionable, so keep an eye there. That could change up some value on the FanDuel end. 8,700 point guard only for Ja. He's under-owned if he's 5%. Give me Ja, 10 to 15%. Give me Bane, 10 to 15%. Give me Triple J, 10 to 15%. Give me nothing else from Memphis in this spot. I don't know how you start sifting through Wells, Edey, Kennard, Aldama, Pippen, Clark, Huff, Laravia. They got too many dudes. So it's Jackson, Bane, and Morant, and nobody else. Nobody else. But that Morant news is huge. For the Spurs, this is the team you want. 40% ownership to Wemby, 30 to Vassell, 30 to Castle, 20 to Keldon, Sorry, 20 to Chris Paul, 15 to Keldon. Barnacle of the Bay, under-owned. I want a bunch of Wemby, who has the power forward eligibility. I want a bunch of Devin Vassell, who deserves his ownership. I've been super high on Stephon Castle since he stepped into the starting spot for Jeremy Sohan, who is also out again today. He looks like he largely deserves that 30% ownership. Chris Paul looks good in that 15 to 20 range. Keldon Johnson looks good at that 15 spot. And then Barnacle as a pivot. I would argue San Antonio is the best team on FanDuel today, guys. That's what happens when you have the highest pace, highest total, and you're in a late night spot where these guys could look a little bit better. Across the board, you're looking for 7 dudes from the San Antonio Spurs. Make sure you get them. Final game, because we got to get out of here. We've got NFL strategy coming up next. Brooklyn Nets, 11-point dogs in Los Angeles, taking on the Lakers. Slow game, 216 total, second lowest total. Brooklyn is obviously a team of jerk-offs. We have no idea what they're doing. But today, it's only Cam Johnson questionable. Bunch of other guys out. Watford, Thomas, Melton, Lewis, Boyan. 3% ownership to Ben Simmons is the highest mark here. If Cam Johnson plays, I think he should be around 10% owned. I really don't think you should be clicking on anything from Brooklyn, though. They couldn't look much worse. And there's a reason the entire team is getting no ownership. We close it with the Lakers. Still no Dorian Finney-Smith, doubtful for personal reasons. AD and LeBron, both probable. 10% ownership to Reeves, spot on. 5% ownership to Anthony Davis. Think about that. He's under-owned. 15% to LeBron, properly owned. 8 to Max Christie, properly owned. Rui Hachimura at 12, properly owned. So get to any part of the starting 5 you want from the Lakers in a matchup against a crappy Brooklyn team. But don't sleep on an 11-4 Anthony Davis, because that dude should probably be 15% owned, and he's only 5. There we go, everybody. That is going to do it. NBA strategy show in the books for Friday. NFL strategy show starting up in a minute. You don't want to miss it. Hit the like button. Contenders video coming out in the next couple minutes. You don't want to miss that either. I'll be back for the deeper dive. Sign up for Stokastic using the link in the description. I'll see you guys Sunday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern time. Sunday NFL days, they're gone for me. Sunday NBA days, they're here. Have a good weekend, everybody.